My name is Morgan Hicks. I'm a graduate admissions advisor here at SUNY Plattsburgh. Tonight, we're going to be discussing the Natural Resources and Ecology Masters with Dr. Mark Lesser. Just a couple of things before we get started. We do have the Q&A feature available, so please send in any questions that you have. You can send them throughout the webinar, and then we have a couple of times where we'll stop and take a look at questions. So please feel free to send anything through. The other thing that I wanted to mention is there are several QR codes throughout the slideshow that will bring you to any relevant web pages. So if you want to, have your phone out so that you can scan anything that's of interest to you that you want to learn a little bit more about, that's great. So we will go ahead and get started. We have a slide here of several of our faculty, and Dr. Lesser is the program coordinator. Do you want to introduce yourself, Dr. Lesser?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Morgan. Hi, everyone. So like Morgan said, I'm the program coordinator for the Natural Resources and Ecology Masters. I'm also an associate professor in the Center for Earth and Environmental Science. I teach a variety of courses, but mostly focused around plant and forest ecology. My research interests are really rooted in understanding tree species, range limits, what allows and limits a tree species from growing where it does and not beyond those points. And I do a lot of tree ring work as part of that, using tree annual growth and modeling that against a suite of climate and deposition and other type of variables to try to understand how trees are growing at their range limit. I also do work with, more recently, with wildlife and with insect and bird communities. A lot of that is at a pine barrens system just north of here. Um, and I also have a lot of research at a large boreal peatland complex in the western Adirondacks. So that's a little about me. I'm happy to, if you have got questions or want me to expand on anything, just let us know.
I think it's
Do you-
also important to note too, you just expressed all of your specific interests and what you research, and all of the faculty have where areas where they do more research. Do you want to just talk for a minute about how you match people up with their interests, our applicants with their
yeah.
interest in a faculty member?
And would you like me to just to kind of go through the different faculty here as
Yeah,
well?
if you'd like to,
And
yeah, that'd
yeah,
be
so
great.
Dr. Myhook is the next picture there. Is the as well as being a professor in the Earth and Environmental Science, is also the director of the Lake Champlain Research Institute. He does a lot of aquatic ecology on phytoplankton and higher trophic levels in Lake Champlain, a lot of long-term monitoring in Lake Champlain. And he also does a lot of work with mostly aquatic but invertebrate insect communities. Um, Dr. Aldred is a biogeochemist and wetland ecologist, and does a lot of wetland restoration work as well. Dr. Garneau is a wildlife ecologist, but also has a really active research program in microplastic contamination. Um, Dr. Foose, starting along the bottom there, is also a biogeochemist, but particularly interested in soil nutrients and how forest cover and other land use change can contribute to how nutrients are cycling through systems and getting into water bodies and moving through ecosystems. Dr. Gurvich is more of a social scientist. He's an environmental planner, but he does a lot of work in um, thinking about climate change mitigation and adaptation for communities. Dr. Shi is an urban geographer. She does a lot of city planning and dealing with environmental issues within urban environments. And finally listed here is Dr. Tyrrell, who is an animal physiologist an ecologist. He's also a very good ornithologist. And him and I collaborate on all of the bird research that I have going on. And he's really interested in like light and noise pollution for birds and also in the optical systems of insects. Um, and there are some other faculty that are definitely interested in being, in advising students in this program. There's a full list on the Center for Earth and Environmental Science page of faculty. And going back to Morgan's original question of like, how do we match people up? Well, several of you I've spoken that are on the Zoom here. I've spoken to, and people send emails or to me, and and express your interests, and then I forward that along and get you in contact with one of these other professors, or have done some homework on Google or on the website and for the program and found someone that you think matches. And this is a really important part of our program is that to get accepted, you need to have a faculty member who agrees to be your advisor. And so reaching out to people sooner than later is a really important part of this. But I'm here to help and everyone, and you can also just email people directly.
Thank you. We also wanted to share our graduate admissions team because several of you will end up talking with us along the way while you're doing your application as well. So Carrie Woodward is our director and Michelle St. Ange is our assistant director. I am the advisor, and then Jordan Cortez is our graduate assistant. She is a current graduate student in the school psychology program. So you might, contact us for different questions, and we're all here to help with any admissions related questions that we can help with. So our overview of what we're going to discuss tonight, we will do a program overview. We'll look at the curriculum, the field experience, the student research and internships, career opportunities. Those are all things that Dr. Lesser will discuss. And then I'm going to discuss the graduate admissions process. I'll talk about the cost and different funding opportunities for graduate students that we offer at Plattsburgh as well. So again, if you have any questions at any time, please put them in the Q&A and we'll get to those later in the session. And again, the QR codes are on a lot of the slides if you want to check anything out along the way. So we'll let you get started, Dr. Lesser.
All right, thanks. So this program is, really our strengths, as it says here on the slide, are in ecology and field biology, environmental policy, and planning. And one of the key aspects of the program is that you can, within the 34 credits, that's the minimum required to complete the program, you can do either a thesis, a research thesis, or an internship option. In both of those options, you're going to have, a primary advisor and a committee that's helping you out. In the internship option, that would, your committee would almost certainly include your internship supervisor. In the research thesis, it might include people from outside the university or other faculty here at Plattsburgh. And you're going to do one of those two things in addition to a variety of coursework that we'll get into, I think, on the next slide. A key part of this master's program and something we really, take pride in with this program is the experiential learning opportunities that it provides you. And, first of all, we're situated in this amazing place to do ecology. It's why I'm here. We've got Lake Champlain on one side of us and the Adirondack Park right on the right to the west on the other side of us. And the combination of those two things mean that for freshwater ecology and terrestrial ecology, really it doesn't get a whole lot better. Within that, we also offer a lot of the classes that we offer that would be available to you are part of what is called the Applied Environmental Science program. These are courses that are cross-listed with undergraduate courses as well. And they're offered in conjunction with the Minor Institute, which is a nonprofit research institute about 20 miles north of here. And we've been running this program for for 50 years at this point with the Minor Institute. And the courses that are offered in that program are meet once a week, but for the entire day. And it gives us then the opportunity to get out in the field and do things, not just have to, go on short little field trips for that a 3-hour lab might afford you. And so, for instance, in my forest ecology class that is part of that program, we go on day-long field trips all over the Adirondacks, and so we can really immerse ourselves in these different ecosystems. Wetland ecology, wildlife ecology, freshwater, and freshwater and stream ecology, soil science, are all also part of that program and give you a really amazing breadth of experiential learning on top of all the other courses, the more traditional type courses that you'd be taking as well. I think we can skip to the next slide, Morgan. Yeah. And so what the program looks like is there's three main categories of classes that you take that you have to take classes in. The first is three set classes that as an environment and a seminar class that where you, depending on who's teaching it any given semester, does you read different papers. For instance, this past fall in that class, students read selected papers from Foundations of Ecology, to really get a grounded basis in where a lot of the research they were doing, where it emerged from, and the thought processes and how it's evolved over the last century or so. Take a class in advanced data analysis and using the R statistical software packages, and class in research methods where you actually write your proposal and form your committee and get a lot of that kind of stuff taken care of all in a class framework. And then the other classes are skills and spatial and analytical skills classes, and then natural resources based classes. And that's where a lot of the field-based classes are. And I think we can skip, to the next one. So here's, those three classes I mentioned, and then you take two classes in applied spatial skills. And so these are classes like environmental law and policy, GIS applications, public relations writing, conservation biology, water quality, and instrumentation just got added to that category. And then three classes in environmental science and natural resources. And so these are the classes I mentioned, like forest, river, wildlife, or wetland ecology, and so on. You take then two additional classes from either of those two categories, and you do usually 6 credits of internship or research thesis work. And so that adds up to, depending on if classes have a lab or not attached to them, somewhere between 34 and 38 credits. And one of the real advantages of that course load, that credit load, is that you can actually complete the program at part-time status. You don't need to take, a full 12 credit or higher course load every semester you're here. And that can have really, good implications financially, especially for you. And so I'm happy to talk about that more as well. But a lot of our students take only 9 credit hours a semester, which gives them time to pursue other things as well.
How many semesters would you say on average it takes to complete the program?
Right, that's a really good question. On average, I'd say it takes our research thesis students 4 semesters. Internship track students often are able to do it in 3 semesters, particularly if their internship is over the summer, and which I'm not counting as but 3 academic year semesters.
Thanks.
And so just as an example of what things might look like in your first semester here, if you're starting in the fall, because a lot of the field-based classes are only offered in the fall, you might take river ecology, wildlife ecology, and sustainability, which would be one of the classes in the skills category. A second semester, you take data analysis and research methods, get your proposal written, and give a public presentation on your proposal at the end of that semester, and then any one of the electives that might be offered. You'd start doing thesis research or getting internship credits by your third semester and take graduate seminar. And then in the fourth semester, you would continue with that thesis or internship credits and get and finish your electives. One thing I'll just say while we're talking about the thesis and internship credits is that for both of those tracks, you write a final paper. It's got a different emphasis. If you're doing an internship, it's going to be more about like, what your experience was and what skills you learned and the value of the internship and where it's leading you versus a research thesis based on the project that you carried out. But in both cases, you write a final report and you give a public presentation of defending your thesis or your internship. So I think I've said most of that.
You
Um,
gotta skip that one.
but But like I said, just to reiterate, it really is an amazing place. That the picture on the left-hand side there is of me and a student out at the Altona Flat Rock, the Pine Barrens I mentioned. You can see some burned jack pine in the above my head there. We had a large wildfire there in 2018, and we've got a lot of research revolving around the recovery of that ecosystem following the wildfire, which is really cool. And so just to give you a sense of what some of our students have been doing both options of the program, Phil Snyder has this massive data set that he's working with the DEC, the Department of Environmental Conservation, to examine the effects of browning across the entire Adirondack Park in several hundred lakes. Naomi Hodgson did the internship. She spent a whole summer working with the Loon Conservation Association based in Saranac Lake, looking at nesting ecology. Emily Reinhardt was a student who was doing much more research on much more the social science side of natural resources. And so she was looking at mountain biking conflicts and public perception and use of trails as mountain biking has kind of exploded in the Northeast, especially since COVID. And there's a lot of tension created on what were traditionally hiking trails that are now becoming multi-use trails and this sort of thing. And she did a really in-depth study. She traveled all around the Northeast, interviewing people at trailheads and compiling this really amazing data set of public perception on that issue. Christian Gilman did an internship with the Adirondack Mountain Club. They had him go out and look at soil and actually quantify soil erosion on hiking trails, which is another big issue in the Adirondacks. If any of you have hiked here, you might know that the trails in many places look like, bobsled runs. So the erosion is so intense. And flip.
I was just gonna ask too, Emily was recently published, right?
Yes, Emily's published. The first chapter of her thesis has been published, and the second, I believe, is in press now. Yeah.
Great, that's awesome.
Annie Arnold is one of my students, and she's looking at insect communities in this boreal peatland complex that I mentioned earlier. And Annie she's got an incredible amount of data. She's actually doing an independent study with me this semester as an elective where she's using everything she's learned to now mentor and teach undergraduate students how to ID insects as well. And so really passing it on and getting credit for that and those sorts of educational opportunities, and especially if you want to continue on in academia, we have a lot of opportunities to teach and to help mentor undergraduate students. Megan Bargabos worked at the Jack Pine Barrens that I just mentioned. She set up game cameras across the whole Pine Barrens and collected data from those game cameras on how different species of wildlife were using different parts of the Pine Barrens at really fine scales and based on stand age when different parts of the Pine Barrens had last burned. And she has gone on to work at the Sable Freshwater Institute over the past year. She just graduated last May. And so building off of that, we don't have a lot of graduates yet in the program because the program is only in its now, I believe this is the fourth year of the program. But like I said, Megan was employed there. Emily is currently working for the city of Plattsburgh in their planning department. Lucas Kemmerling, who just graduated in the fall, this past fall, is working as the wetland ecologist for Nature Preserve in Colorado. And we have another student, Jillian Cara, is working as an environmental consultant for, I forget the name of the consulting firm, but our and Luke Bersetti has gone on to is currently doing a PhD at the University of Vermont. So our graduates are doing really well and in a whole variety of things. And typically, most of the students coming into the program are thinking about jobs like listed here: park naturalist, environmental scientist, environmental planner, field ecologist, agency fisheries, forestry or wildlife scientist. And what we're seeing even as early as we are in the program is that students are being successful getting into all of these fields.
Okay, so we do have one question that came through so far. They're asking, what would be the pros and cons of doing 4 semesters as an internship track student?
Right. I mean, the the pro of I guess is it's really up to you. I mean, all I was saying was that it's fairly easy to complete the coursework in 3 semesters. Spreading it out if you want more time to devote to maybe other, to independent research projects, or, depending on how involved your internship is or how long you end up wanting to do the internship for, are all things that you discuss with your advisor and your committee and your internship supervisor. And so, I mean, it's really a case by case situation. But it is possible, and this can, be important financially for a lot of students, that you can finish it, um, well, I hesitate to say fairly easily, but it is definitely, possible to finish it in 3 semesters if the financial side or just the time of the degree are things that are concerning you. Spreading it out into 4 semesters is by no means an issue at all, though, and might be an advantage to you.
Great. And they said that helped. Thank you. Okay, so if we don't have any other questions, we'll move forward with the presentation, but please feel free to keep sending in questions either for Dr. Lesser or for myself. So we're going to move forward and talk about the admissions application and funding opportunities. So if you are planning to apply, you would want to visit our website. On the graduate admissions page, there is a how to apply tab. And there you'll find a lot of information about the application process, and you'll find the link to the application as well. So you'd want to submit the application, and then the next thing you would do is submit your required materials. So it's kind of a 2-step process. You start with the application, submit that and your application fee, and then you can submit your other documents. So those would include your resume, your statement of purpose, and you also would request all of your official transcripts be sent to us. If you happen to be a SUNY Plattsburgh student, we will get your transcripts from the registrar's office. You also would need 3 letters of recommendation. For that, you actually just name your recommenders right on the application, and they get an email, and that will prompt them to submit their letter. So you don't have to get it from them. You just need to give us their contact information. And then you do need to have a bachelor's degree in a science discipline. Dr. Lesser, do you want to mention anything about that, of what types of degrees people typically have when they come in, or what different degrees you see for undergrad?
Right. And so technically, yes, you need to have a degree in a science discipline, but and most of our students coming into the program have degrees in undergraduate degrees in biology, in specifically in ecology or in environmental science. But we do consider any degree. With degrees outside of that, we look more closely at transcripts and what course exact specific courses you've taken, and then depending on the degree and what courses you've taken, we might, a condition of acceptance might be that you need to, take a couple courses at the undergraduate level that wouldn't count towards your graduate degree, but to get you up to speed in some of those in some of those fundamental areas that you might be missing. But we are willing to consider, really, anyone um, who's interested, but with maybe those caveats attached to it. Mhm.
Thank you. And then lastly, GRE scores are optional at SUNY Plattsburgh. I typically tell people, because people do ask, I do tell people we don't see them very often, but if you have taken them and you have strong scores and you feel like that would help your application, please feel free to submit that. So you can start the program in either the fall or spring semester. The program is at our main campus in Plattsburgh, and it is an in-person program. Are there any online classes in the program? I don't
No,
think
there are
so.
not.
I
No.
didn't think so. And then it is rolling admissions, and that means that we suggest you complete your application at least 6 weeks before the start of the semester that you would like to start. So now we're just going to take a quick look at the costs. As you can see, it depends on if you are a New York State student or an out-of-state student. And then it also depends on if you plan to live on campus or not. So you can see all the different prices there. And then FAFSAs. So things that are a little different about a FAFSA when you're going into graduate school is you would no longer include your parental income. You would only put your own information on your FAFSA. If you are married, you would include your spouse's. But we still suggest that you complete a FAFSA because you can take out federal loans. There's also work study opportunities for graduate students. We have department fellowships that require you to be eligible for work study. So we definitely recommend everyone complete a FAFSA. So there's a few different types of funding opportunities available at Plattsburgh. The first few that we're going to discuss have a work obligation. So there's a work component to all of these. The first one would be our graduate assistantship program. So you do need to be a full-time student. Typically full-time is 12 credits, but there's a form that you can complete to be considered full-time at 9 credits if you're a graduate assistant. So these are jobs that are on campus where you would work 10 or 20 hours a week, depending on the position. If you work 10 hours, you have half of your tuition waived. If you work 20 hours, you have 100% tuition waived. And that's at the New York State rate. So that's for New York State residents. If you're an out-of-state resident, you can still be a graduate assistantship or have a graduate assistantship, but it won't cover 50 or 100% of your tuition. It would be approximately $5,000 or $11,000. Besides the tuition coverage, you also would receive a stipend, and that amount varies depending on the position, and that is paid out in a biweekly paycheck. You can apply for these directly on the graduate admissions application now. And if you happen to be a current student and wanting to apply, there's a separate application for that. There's a couple that are listed here for this upcoming year. I don't know if they've been hired yet. Um,
No, so both those close on February 15th is the deadline for submitting. Can I, so the Center for Earth and Environmental Science graduate assistantship is a half time, is a 50% assistantship. And typically the student who gets selected to fill that position teaches and helps coordinate with faculty lab sections of the general ecology class through the year. And that is open to any student coming into, in or coming into the program. The Lake Champlain Research Institute assistantships are grant-funded assistantships specific to the Lake Champlain Research Institute. And if you're interested in, in those, you really need to reach out to Dr. Myhook, who is like I said before, the director of the Research Institute. And those are really specific for projects that he has going on. And it's not open to just any student to apply for. But if you're interested in aquatic ecology or freshwater ecology and you're thinking of applying here, you should talk to Dr. Myhook and talk to him about those assistantship opportunities.
thank you. And I'll mention too, there are also graduate assistantships throughout campus that are open to grad students from any program. And those are typically in administrative offices. We have a graduate assistant in our office. The Learning Center has one, the Accessibility Resources Office. So you can check those out on the website as well, if those are anything that you'd be interested in. And then our graduate fellowship program. This is where I mentioned completing a FAFSA because you do need to be work study eligible, and that is determined by your FAFSA. So these would be positions where you're working part-time. It could be as a research assistant, a teaching assistant, or a paraprofessional. There's at least one position in the department. Is that correct, Dr. Lesser?
We actually have two positions open. Again, these are due by February 15th. One is the first is a full academic year position. And so both the fall and spring semester. And the other is just a one semester position. It's basically a 50% fellowship that could be either for the spring or the fall or the spring semester. And both of those are research assistantships. You'd be, designing, research that, probably is connected to your research interests and things. And you can do that research with your faculty advisor, or you can reach out to someone else on the faculty if there's a side project that you wanted to work on. There's lots of different, ways that we can, make this, that you can make this work. Mm-hmm.
So for those positions, you can work 20 hours in the fall or spring semester. The application is on our website. You would be paid $20 an hour, which can add up to $12,000 a year. And as we said, that is due February 15th. So that is coming up in just about 10 days. So if you're interested in that, please apply and make sure that you have a FAFSA completed as well. So another thing that you could do with working on campus would be working in campus housing and community living. Some people might have done this in their undergraduate, where you've served as what some people call an RA or an RD. We call them community advocates and programming advocates. There's also assistant community director positions. So basically you're working in the dorms with the students that live in the dorms and providing different programming services, doing administrative services, and you would receive a free single room and a discounted meal plan for that. And you can apply for those with the Office of Campus Housing and Community Living. They also have graduate assistants that are working in the same capacity. So you can apply for those positions as well. So there's a couple of funding opportunities that do not have a work component that we're going to discuss. One is the Diversity Fellowship, and the other is the Graduate Opportunity Program. So the Diversity Fellowship is open to US students or permanent residents of the US. You have to be a newly applying graduate student, so people who are coming into their first year of grad school. You would complete the application that's found on our website. This one is also due February 15th, so it's coming up soon. And through your application, are basically going to explain how you would be contributing to the diversity of the graduate student body and the field that you're going into, as well as discussing any disadvantages that you've overcome in your higher education career. Again, this one has no work component. It is the application, and the applications are reviewed by a committee, and then tuition awards are given to those who are selected. And the next one is the Graduate Opportunity Program. So this is open to students who graduated from EOP, HEOP, or SEEK programs. You do need to be a full-time graduate student pursuing a master's degree or certificate program. This one is very simple. It's a very quick application. It's due February 15th as well. You just fill out a short application with your information, and then the director of your EOP program, wherever you did your undergrad, will certify that you are an EOP graduate. And then this is again reviewed by a committee, and awards are given out to students who are selected. And the awards can range from $1,000 per semester to full tuition. So I always recommend that EOP students complete this if they're planning to apply to graduate school. So that was our last slide. We do have at least one more question.
Yeah.
So we'll look at our questions. This one says, how much weight would work experience carry in relation to the courses from a BA of science?
Mhm. Yeah. So Daniel, that is um, something we would definitely consider. The primary way that's going to get, considered is, when you reach out and establish, a conversation with potential advisors, and really start talking with that faculty member about what you want to do in the degree, what type of research you're going to do, or what kind of internship opportunity you're going to pursue. That's when your advisor and then ultimately your committee, but in the admissions process, really your advisor is going to, when I talk to them, is going to say, yeah, I really like this student. I think they would fit well in my lab, but they're, and they don't have a couple of the courses maybe we would always want, but they've been working in the field for, this long, and I think they have really relevant experience, and so I still want to accept them. We're going to, basically, me and the program admissions committee that we have of several of the other, myself and several of the faculty, are going to, really, take that to heart, and take the advice of the potential advisor, in what they think you need and how much weight, work experience they think that should carry, in accepting you. Does that help, Daniel?
I have kind of a follow-up question to that. If a student, he says, yes, that makes sense. If a student does have to take a course as a condition of their acceptance, do you typically see them taking the course here at SUNY Plattsburgh, or have they been taking them at places that might be closer to home for them? How?
We haven't had that experience yet, and like I said, the program is relatively
Mhm.
new, though, so we haven't had a lot of students where we've asked them to take any classes. And so, yeah, it's not some, but I mean, that would definitely be something to do before you came, and again, something you discuss with your advisor and the committee would be aware of. And if you said, well, over the summer, I'm going to take a, general ecology at such and such a, online or whatever the case may be. And that would definitely, you know, you know, make your case stronger for being accepted into the program, and it might save you time rather than waiting to take it while you're already here.
Great. So this question is asking, is there a way to check on the applications for assistantships and fellowships? I believe I applied for them when I originally applied for the master's program. So I would say if you reach out to our office, so you can email graduate@plattsburgh.edu, that email address that's on the screen, and just let us know that you are wanting to make sure that we have you listed as applied for whichever particular fellowship or assistantships, and we can check that for you and let you know. So please feel free to reach out to our office. And then this question is asking, are there separate applications to complete for the GA and fellowship positions beyond the grad school application? So for graduate assistantships, you would apply directly on the admissions application, but the fellowships have a separate application. So let me see if I can go backwards to the fellowship page. If you were to scan this QR code, that would bring you directly to the graduate fellowship webpage, and there would be a link there for the application for the fellowship program. So that one does have a separate application. And again, if you want us to check and see if you applied correctly, we can do that as well. Just reach out to our office. And again, I'm going to put our contact information up there. Okay. So I don't see any more questions, but I just want to say, please feel free to reach out to either our office, our email address and phone number is there, with any questions that we can answer. And then Dr. Lesser's email address is there as well. If you have any questions that you think might be more specific for Dr. Lesser, we're always willing to, help answer any questions that we can. Anything you want to say, Dr. Lesser, before we
No, I
go?
think we've covered everything, but yeah, I'll just reiterate, reach out anytime, and I'm happy to set up a Zoom or telephone call if you want to talk um, more than just through email. Mhm.
Great. Yes, and we also take appointments as well in our office. If you are on our webpage, you'll see a tab for appointments and events. Similar to where you registered for tonight's event, you can register for a one-to-one appointment if you're interested in that. All right. Well, I thank you everyone for attending and for your questions. We appreciate you being here and asking some great questions, and we look forward to talking to you all in the future.